Hi, I'm Mark Latender, a systems consultant with RISC, and today in VTA I'd like to go over using the Student Status Report CSV output for due date calculation. In a previous video about the basics on due date calculation, I covered where are they used in the system, the VTA calculation process, using the CSV output for your data source, and the calculation date parts, those being the requirement effective date, the grace period plus their assignment date, the exemption expiration date, and how often it's required to be done from the last time it was completed. We talked about how you compare the four major parts, and whichever one is latest is the due date when it's assigned in one location, and then if it's assigned in multiple locations, meaning it's assigned to a job title and a team that a person is associated to, or two teams that they're associated to, the same course is assigned twice, you have to do the calculation for each requirement, compare them, and whichever one is more strict or earlier is the due date for that person for that course. A couple things to note about the dates that you'll see in the CSV file. One is the 12/30/1899 at 12 a.m. date. If you see that date in the CSV, that just means it stands for a null value. There is no date. So in this instance here, the person's not scheduled at all, but this person is scheduled for this course on this date. You can get rid of these dates simply by using the Control-H feature in Excel and replace the value with blanks. And the next thing to do would be to format those fields as dates. The second point to make about dates is the 1/1/2500 date. You'll see those if somebody is exempt for a course and they are exempt forever. Even though in the system you might see a blank date, we have to populate that field in the CSV with something. And so the 1/1/2500 date is that date. The key to remember is that the CSV you're going to use is based off of the student status report. So you'll go ahead and start that report and just be sure that on the Where tab, you're going to select the CSV file type. I've run the student status report on a department, and you can see that there are a lot of fields that come out in the CSV. And we're not going to cover them all here. What we are going to cover are the fields that are relevant to the due date calculation process. I've copied these field names and placed them on another tab so we could look at them. And I have labeled those that are relevant to the due date calculation process. So out of all those fields, these are the things that you might care about in looking at your CSV. You need a unique identifier for the person, a unique identifier for the course, and then you're going to get a lot of information related to the due date calculation. So what is the requirements frequency? What is the grace period? We have the last time that the student attended the course. You actually have a field called due date, and that is the due date for the person. If they are exempt for the course, we'll get the exemption expiration date. You have a grace date, and that'll be the student's assignment date plus the grace period. You've got the next date, which is the student's last completion plus the frequency. And you've got the requirement type, whether or not it's a job title requirement, a team requirement, or an individual requirement. And then the requirement location. Which team or job title or individual is it assigned to? You've got the student's assignment date for the requirement's effective date, and if by chance the requirement has a due month set, that's included as well. I've taken this initial CSV and I colored the header. So this is all the data. And as I mentioned too in the PowerPoint, what you might want to do, replace the null values using my Control-H. I want to replace this so now I'm only left with dates. To the original CSV, all I've done is add a color header. I haven't changed any column heading names or anything, but I want to look at it a little bit slower and know that I did reorganize some of the fields to make this demonstration easier. So if we look at the simplest way to look at the CSV, that is simply to just look at the person, the course, and what is their due date. Now notice that this one course is assigned twice for two different reasons. It's assigned to them individually and they happen to be on a team. The requirement due date for one of them is 10/22/18, whereas the individual requirement, those settings create a date that calculates out to 6/28. Since it's assigned twice and this one is earlier or more strict, the student or on reports, you would see 6/28/18. If it's assigned just once, then simply look to the due date column to see the due date. Now this doesn't show how we calculated it, this is just the end result. If I add in a few more fields, you can see how we get that due date. That effective date is here. You've got the grace date, and that is going to be the assignment date plus the grace period. If they were exempt, you would see that here in the grant date field. Now notice down here that this person for this one course is exempt forever, and that is because we see that 1/1/2500 date. And finally, we've got the next date. The next date is going to be their last completion date plus the frequency. When we compare the four major parts, the effective date ends up being later than all the others. That is why it's set as the due date. We can go even further and look at the details of how we came to these pieces. The effective date doesn't change, but here's the assignment date plus the grace days to come out to the grace date. So 60 days after 8/8/18 is going to be 10/7. Are they grandfathered or exempt from the course or not? If you see a date here other than 1/1/2500, that means they were exempt and it expires on that date. When was the last time they took the course? Plus the frequency months, and you can see that 24 months after 6/13 is going to be 6/13/09. If it had a due month set, then you would see this date adjusted to the last date of that month. You can see how using the CSV helps you drill down into exactly why a course is due on the date that it is for a specific person. And that's how you could use the Student Status Report CSV for your due date calculation process. Thanks for watching.